That's like the most brutal part is trying to sleep well when you're traveling.
On the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
How,
is. It
how do you
is.
handle
Yeah.
that? Like, what are your tactics?
Uh, Man, that's a really good question. Um, mask, the eye mask is super important. I think that's one of like the things that I experience most is when I'm staying. Just like when we were in Europe, it seemed like there was only like these really light white blinds on every
Yeah.
single window, and there's always a street lamp right outside,
Right.
and like it's like basically daytime in your in your room when you're going to sleep. So eye mask helps a lot, and then yeah, just kind of trying to have that little routine no matter where you're at, um, helpful. But yeah, I mean it's just having your own bed and having that routine. You just can't beat
Yeah.
it for sleep.
Yeah, that's probably my number one deterrent for travel is knowing I'm not going to sleep well. But other than that, I
Yeah.
do love it. I'm super spoiled here. I've got the 8 sleep temperature controlled mattress that like adjusts overnight,
Ah,
like based on your sleep
nice.
cycle. It's
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
game changer for sure. Highly recommend.
yeah. I actually have the Uller.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, I think that's what it's called, the Uller, right? Yeah. But yeah, same thing with the
Yeah.
cooling. You can set it to go a bit
Yeah.
cooler, like when you're getting in that deep sleep. Like I love that. I love that because I tend to get a little hot when I'm
Same.
sleeping, so it helps a
Makes
lot.
a huge difference in the
Yeah.
summer, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
What
exactly.
about do you mess with mouth tape or anything like that for sleeping?
I do.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. For a long time now, for probably like 3 or 4 years, I've taped my mouth at night. I just use like a really small little piece of tape, just like right in the middle, and that seems to do the trick. And sometimes I'll go through phases where I'm like, I'm not going to use it for a little bit, and I'll go like maybe like 2 weeks without it or something. But I usually end up coming back to
Yeah.
it. I just find like I just get in that deeper sleep with the nasal breathing. How
Oh,
about
for
you?
sure.
You use
Yeah,
that?
I've been doing it for
Yeah.
I'd say about 2 years now. I read the book
Nice.
Breath by James Nestor, and
Ah,
yeah, I was
yes.
on board immediately. And like after night one, I
Yeah.
was sold. And I
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
probably only had 2 or 3 nights over the last 2 years that I didn't mouth tape, and man, it just felt like
Mm.
I was like breathing poison all night. Like I did not feel right. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's for me like I read The Oxygen Advantage by Peter
yeah,
McCann,
I've read one of his
and
books.
yeah, okay. And he said in his book that like if you tape for like 6 months or something like that, I forget how long he said that, eventually like you would just uh, not have to tape anymore and just like sleep with your mouth closed. I haven't found that to be the
Yeah,
case for me, but I keep on wanting it to be like. It'd be nice if like I could just train myself to do
right.
this. I didn't have to put the tape on, but it just seems like it's just the thing to do. It doesn't take too much time. You just do your little
Yeah.
thing, and yeah.
Yeah, I've managed a few like small naps, nasal breathing, but overnight if I don't have it, that
Mm,
mouth opens up for sure. And then yeah,
yeah.
it's I go with the full horizontal strip, just like full seal, no chance of air coming out.
Oh
Oh yeah,
yeah, just
yeah,
like
yeah, just end to end. Yeah,
nice. Okay, yeah. I think I would do that if it wasn't for my facial hair. Like
I get like
it gets a little rough sometimes in the morning taking
yeah,
it off. I'm
I
like,
got
oh,
like the really thin 3M tape, so it's just like it doesn't
okay,
overlap the facial hair. But yeah,
nice.
it'll definitely stick to the lip skin. It's a little brutal
Yeah,
taking it off, but it gives a good seal.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's worth it for good
Oh,
sleep.
for sure,
You know.
for sure.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of my audience already knows who you are. But for those that don't, will you kind of define both strength side and why you got into it, why you started it?
Yeah. Um, yeah. I think strength side is it's kind of my endeavors of exploring how movement can, uh, improve my quality of life, and and sharing that with, you know, anybody that wants to follow along that might find some value there. When I first got started with Strength Side, I think I saw a space in like the YouTube community for something a bit different than what like the mainstream was primarily doing on YouTube. And that's always been one of my missions, is just to kind of show people that, you know, there can be a different approach to training and to fitness and movement, and you know, that might work better for you than setting, you know, your expectations to be like some of these huge mainstream fitness influencers. Right. Yeah, and I think the reason why I started Strength Side was, you know, like very honestly, it was because I was a personal trainer, and I just started being like, I don't think I can do this like my whole life. Like this isn't sustainable, right. You know, but like how can I like do something that is sustainable and also like me get more fulfilled from it, have a bigger outreach to other people. So yeah, like that kind of became the mission, and that was about maybe 8 or 9 years ago now.
So did you have any kind of vision for what it would look like today, or has it just been, you know, follow what you're interested in and see if that resonates with the audience?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been very much like, let's see where this journey takes me. I had very small details of like what I wanted to see Strength Side evolve to. Like, you know, I wanted to, you know, grow the YouTube audience, and I wanted to be able to make programs for people that people could do on their own and not have to like sit there one-on-one with people for, you know, a long period of time.
Right.
But other than that, it's just been kind of like, okay, what are my interests right now? Like, what am I passionate about? I want to share that. Let's see how the audience receives it. And some things are received well, and some things are like, you know, I don't think too many people are so interested in that. And that's fine. You know, it's just been like a filtering process over the years.
So have you felt that that's been inspirational for your own journey as you've gone, or like as it's gotten more popular, has it kind of, have you felt boxed in where you're like, well, I want to try this, but I don't know how the audience is going to respond? Like, what is that relationship for you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think it's a bit of both. Like, I'm not scared to share something new and that I think has a lot of value and that I'm really interested in. But yeah, like as you grow your audience and as more people are interested, like it's hard to not think about like, well, what do people want to see from me? And like, what's a video that would do really well and get a lot of views? And I'm sure like any content creator goes through that to a certain extent. I'm always trying to balance myself out with like, okay, like I don't think it's selling out to actually make things that are popular and that, you know, people are interested in. 'Cause like if you can maybe drop a little bit of your own personal philosophy and things that you do think are valuable packaged in something that is pretty popular, I think that, you know, that's an efficient way to get your message out there, right?
Yeah, it's a nice balance.
Exactly. But if you're doing too much of that, like it's not authentic, I think, you know? So yeah, exactly. Finding that balance as much as you can.
I think that's a really nice thing about YouTube with some of the longer form content. 'Cause I see that nowadays you do a pretty good balance of both like shorts and long form content, because it's like the short, you know, you can only get so much context and passion into a short, but it can create a funnel to your more meaningful content. So I think, yeah, it's all finding that balance and staying inspired. But man, it's grown like crazy. It's insane from when I started following you to where it is now.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Well, it was cool that you emailed me through that same email thread that we had. What was that 3 years ago, maybe?
2019, yeah.
2019. Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure at that time it was way smaller, and yeah, it's been interesting to see the growth, and I think like evolving with the content has been a part of our growth. Like we hopped on the shorts train kind of early. Like I saw that was going to be a thing, and yeah, like I have a love-hate relationship with shorts. It's like, like I kind of hate that that's where the culture is going, that like we just don't have attention anymore and we have to see this like really quick hitting things.
Right.
But
You have 3 seconds.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Can you hook someone like in 3 seconds? But like you said, like it's like like a lot of people who see our shorts and like they like them and then they subscribe and then they watch our longer form content. So it's like evolving with the times. You kind of have to do it. You don't have to do it, but like I think it's smart.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So along the lines of content creation, one thing I've been intrigued with trying to balance is consuming versus creating, because I know personally I'm so passionate about learning in this space, but then I'll also feel like totally strung out when I'll just go on this huge information bender for weeks at a time and be like what am I doing? What have I actually learned? What have I implemented? There's 100 different things I want to try now. So along the lines for you, since you are creating so much content, how do you balance that consumption of new material and, you know, actually evaluating what your thoughts and what you want to share with your audience is?
Yeah. The age of information right now, right? It's like we have everything at our fingertips. You can go on these big like binges of research and whatnot, and it's so easy to do. So I think like for me personally, and I extrapolate this to a lot of other people, that it's actually easier to be in a consuming state right now than creating. So I try to create, or I try to bring these habits into my life that bring creation. So like every morning I try to write. So like either just journaling, just kind of like talking about what's been going on, or like journaling out ideas for content for strength side, or just like philosophical ideas that I have about movement and training. And that really kind of keeps me in more of a creation mode, I guess you could say. And then I think like other things like movement is creation, you know, like you're putting something out there into the world, no matter what type of movement that is. So I think like as long as you have like strong habits in your life that are leading you more into creation, then it makes it easier to then be like, okay, like now I'm going to sit down and make a YouTube video because I have momentum.
Right.
But like to your point, you know, I like to watch people's stuff and I like to see what's going on out there. And sometimes that can be inspiring to me to create. Right. Or sometimes it can just like lead to just more just binging and and just like consuming a lot more content. But I try to like stay away from like the news, like what's popular, like in like for instance, like this whole Liver King thing that's going on. Like I haven't really consumed much of that because I'm like, I don't want to just like hop on to whatever the new thing is that's going on. Like that doesn't really help me in any way. So yeah, that's kind of a filter I have for myself, is to like not jump on like the flashy new thing.
So the writing in the morning, that's immediate. That's first thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, usually I try to read a little bit first thing.
Okay.
I'll like sit down with a cup of coffee and I'll read for maybe 15 minutes, and then I'll usually write after that.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's one of the first things I do each morning.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds like a good way to not just start clicking on your phone, because that's like the worst possible way to start the day, and it's so easy to do that.
It is, man. It is. I actually I'll turn off my phone at night, or I'll put it on airplane mode. So then in the morning, it's not like accessible for me to be like, oh, what's going on my email today or whatever. It's just like, that's off. I'm not going to turn that on until, maybe like 10 a.m. some days,
Nice. So
Yeah.
one of the early videos I saw from you, and it looks like, I think it's your top viewed video right now, is the Bulletproof Knees routine. So I kind of fell into your space when I was having knee issues, and I really liked your approach to everything. I don't think I discovered, I think it was actually you that turned me on to knees over toes guy, which is funny because I've, gone down this
Really?
whole rabbit hole.
Wow.
And now have a company based around it. So I attribute your channel basically for, being the seed for all of this. So I appreciate that. And
Wow.
the Bulletproof Knees routine. So what has changed since you made that in your personal approach, or is it pretty much still the same?
Yeah. My personal approach is pretty much the
Okay.
same. One thing that I didn't put in that routine that was just more of like I wanted to make it accessible for most people, was just like knee
Mm-hmm.
flexion, hamstring work. That's been a huge part of that really turned my knees around when I started doing just like basic either hamstring curls and like Nordic style work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but other than that, like my knees feel really good if I just use them through full range of motion. If I make sure that I'm getting, knee compression, knees over toes type exercises, and balancing that out with some hamstring work, like I feel really solid.
So is most of your current knee training that you're doing for yourself, is it more you're getting that through full range of motion, like in your movement practice that's a bit more freestyle, or are you doing that plus a combination, or primarily, more strength, quote, strength based movements where it's a bit more structured and less playful?
Good question. I go through phases throughout the year. So like this year I've done a phase where I was doing full range of motion sissy squats. I've done a phase where I've been doing some some knees over toes split squats. And then I've done phases where I haven't been doing any strength work at all, and it's just like for me, like I can get a lot of that knees over toes juice from my movement
Mm-hmm.
practice, or just like working some stuff into my warm up for a movement style day where I'm just doing I really love just going from a deep squat position and then kind of bringing the knees forward like a sissy
Mm-hmm.
squat type of motion, and then sitting in seiza, and I do that for a warm up a lot, like a few days a week for sure. And that, my knees love that. My knees love that so much. And then a lot of the stuff that I'm doing through just movement exploration and stuff, I mean, a lot of it is getting your knees in really deep positions and stuff. So, for instance, right now I'm not doing too much strength training for my knees. And I'll probably put something back in next year.
So do you feel like a starting point for someone could be more this kind of playful knees over toes style where they're not doing structured reps, or do you think if you do have that pain, you really need to uh, be more mindful of your constraints and start in a more structured, rep based type program?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends on the individual. As much as I hate that answer, because I'd love to just give some practical stuff, but I think some people can maybe balance those two. It's like maybe they're starting to work on some split squats, but then they're also getting just some like time on the floor, changing between positions, getting in some exploration of deep knee bend positions, like a half kneeling position, a seiza position, and working that into their warm-up routine or whatever. And yeah, combining that with some sets and reps of some split squats, some hamstring curls, whatever it is. But yeah, I like to encourage most people to try to take that approach a little bit, right? Because I don't know, that's like one of my philosophies is that we need to train because we need to be strong. We need to bring up our weak links and all this. But then, we also should play and explore. And, that has tons of value for your body as well.
And the irony is that's usually what got us in the position that we're in the first place, is that we stopped playing. So it's like, if that's not your intent, is to return to play, then what are you training for? Because it's kind of, that's what keeps us going.
It's a great point. Yeah, that's a great point. I think that we would keep more of our physical functional bodies if we did just encourage more organic, playful movement. Like even like when you say play, like it can be anywhere from like actually playing a sport to just more of this like explorative movement that you may see on the internet, animal movement, stuff like that. But yeah, like I think it's amazing the benefits that play has on your body physically, but then also like mentally and emotionally as well.
Yeah, that term return to play is always one I hated, because it's like based around like you got to reach these strength metrics before, quote, return to play. But it's like you need to be playing at all times. It's just that play might look a little different now based on where you are than what it's going to look like in 3 months or whatever. But you get stuck in this chronic like rehab and training protocol where it's like, oh, I got to get here before I can play. It's like, no, you need to play now. It's just, what does that look like?
Yeah, man, that's such a good point. And like I've researched a lot and just kind of in my own personal practice seen the implications of like your mental state on your physical ailments, let's cause it, or pain or whatever, right?
It's not huge. Everything.
And, and when you're in that rehabbing mindset, it's like you're always in this mindset of like, I gotta fix this thing. Like for me at one point it was like my knee, and I was like, okay, I gotta hit it from this angle and this angle, and I gotta do this amount of sets and reps, and I gotta get up to this weight, But it kind of kept me in a more what's the word, just like obsessive state about that thing. And like I think just my energy was like, I'm holding tension here. Like I'm holding this pattern. I'm not letting this pattern go. That has me in pain already. So once I like kind of started taking the approach of like, let me just focus on some other things. Let me get to like exploring and playing in some ways that I can, like that knee pain, like it just kind of gradually melted away, and it wasn't a thing in my life anymore.
Yeah, it's incredible how the focus just perpetuates the pain. Like if you want to have chronic pain, obsess over the pain and think about it all the time. Like, that's a surefire way to keep it going. So
yes, but the catch-22 is that you got to focus on it a little bit, right? So it's like you gotta find that balance once again.
You've got to be proactive, but it's like how do you frame it? It goes a long way. So along the lines of pain and overcoming injury, didn't you mess up your ankle pretty bad like within the last year or so?
Yeah, it was around like a year to a year and a half ago. I had a pretty severe ankle injury and I had surgery.
What was the surgery?
The surgery was basically I had like ripped some of the ligaments from the bone, the lateral ligaments, like the ATFL and the CFL, and then I also had torn my peroneal tendon as well. So they kind of like went in there and repaired couple of those
So
things.
what was your approach? Because I know you also have a Bulletproof Ankles video that does extremely well as well. Where
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you incorporate, elements of play as well as a more structured approach? You could base it on that video, or I'm just curious what approach you took after making that video and then actually going through it yourself. And it's like, all right, I got to get back,
Yeah.
because it's always a little different once it's easy to make the video like after the fact, but while you're in it, it's like, all right, what are you actually doing, and what's the day to day look like?
Oh, dude, so true. Yeah. It's so yeah, it's really ties into our conversation really well here between taking an approach of doing a lot of specific work for that ankle to try to bring back mobility and stability. So I did a lot of stability work, which was like in the form of Romanian single leg Romanian deadlift type things, and I forget the exercise that you call it, but when you're like tapping in front of you, to the side, behind you,
Yeah, it's like a
done
star drill
kind of,
or something. Like, yeah,
yeah,
staying on
right,
one leg and
right.
moving it. Yeah.
It's a pretty traditional like ankle stability rehab type of protocol, and then just starting to work on getting the range of motion back through things like deep split squats, and fortunately, like, I didn't lose too much strength with like tibialis stuff, because I was able to like, the thing that I couldn't do like was basically inverting and everting. So I could like pump my ankle a lot. So I was fortunately able to keep a lot of that strength. But then, yeah, like, it's like you do a lot of that stuff and that gets you feeling more confident. And that had me feeling a bit more confident and safe in the ankle. But then when it's like time to take that out into play and into a more like organic environment, that safety kind of, it almost like retreats, and you're like, oh, like, I don't know if I feel okay to do this. So it was like exposure therapy of like, let me do a little bit more this day. Let me do a little bit more this day. I did a lot of stuff on a hill, was just like doing certain walks going up a hill, like going forward and then going back down. And it's like, it's almost like you're doing, what do you call it? Poliquin step ups,
Right.
but like in an actual like functional environment where it's like, okay, like now I need to get my foot back to like articulating with an uneven
Yeah,
surface,
more
and stuff like
feedback
that.
than
So
just repping it out on a box or something.
exactly, yeah. So I would go out and do that like every day for like 2 months. And yeah, it took a lot of time. It was a really severe injury. But eventually like got to the point where, okay, like, feeling more normal now.
So that's part of the physical part, and then of course you've got graded exposure, which is physical and mental. But what mental approach, like, what is your headspace when you do suffer an injury? How do you not, have of course everyone's going to have the minor meltdown, but it's like, how do you keep perspective?
Yes.
And not lose perspective on that this isn't forever. What's your approach?
Yeah, I actually just wrote an email about this to my email list, so it's like really fresh in my mind right now. And I like, my approach has been, number one is like, you kind of like you said, like, you're gonna have a bit of a meltdown, especially if you're an athlete, and you're gonna start thinking about all the things that you can't do because of your injury, right? Can't do my sport right now. And I think as quickly as you can, like, you have to try to flip that mindset to be like, okay, this is where I'm at. This is my reality. What can I do? And like, one thing that helps me is I start thinking about like, what am I thankful for right now? Right. And it's like, I busted up my ankle, but I still have, like, I could have broke my arm, I could have like broke my wrist, and I wouldn't have this hand, right? So like, I have my hands right now. I can cook food, I can make food for me, I can do handstands, I can do upper body calisthenics work and lifting work or whatever. So I got to feel grateful for that. And then I got to start thinking about these things of like, what can I do right now for this time? Because if I just sit here and just think about how like poor me, like I can't play basketball right now because my ankle's busted up, like that's going to take me in a really like terrible mental state, and like I'm probably going to get depressed, right? So my original injury with when I tore my meniscus in my knee, like that brought me into handstands, and that really changed my journey because I got super into handstands and calisthenics and bodyweight stuff, and it like opened up a lot of doors for me. Yeah. So if you can start to like see things in that light and like see how it could be an opportunity for you to grow in different ways through physical practice, then that's going to be the most beneficial thing, and I know like it's easy to say it. It's so hard. It's a lot harder to do, but you can do it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Gratitude is one of the hardest things to access when you're down, but it's like the most powerful thing you can do. Another thing I really like is meditation. There's like meta meditations where you're basically focused on the well-being of someone else, because you can also get very in your head selfishly, thinking about like everything you can't do, but like, why did this happen to me? And you're just thinking about yourself all the time. So gratitude and turning that energy to someone else, I think, are both very powerful when you're down. Easier said than done, but
that's great advice.
But, I try to practice that when I can.
Yeah. No, I really love that, man. And that is one of the things that I've noticed, specifically from this last ankle injury I had was, I was so much focused on myself. I was like, I'm just in my head. Okay. Like every day I'm like, okay, 4 more weeks till I should be able to do this. And like, in 8 weeks I'll be able to do this, and like, I got to do all these rehab things right now. And it's easy to just get so fixated on yourself. So yeah, I love that advice of having some gratitude and like getting your energy to care about other people and the world and stuff. Like, yeah, I like
time frames can be brutal too, where you put, because it's like additional pressure.
Yeah.
Everything that's putting additional pressure on yourself is going to be counterproductive in the long run when you're already in that heightened nervous system state and trying to let the body do what it is designed to do. So it's...
Yeah, man, that's so true. And like reading about other people's experiences, like it can be helpful, but then sometimes you start comparing yourself to
they could do this at 6 weeks. And
they started running at 8 weeks out, and like,
right.
I can't run right now, and you just start feeling bad. Right. So yeah.
It's tricky. I really enjoyed a more recent video you had made about not setting goals anymore. This was something you were balancing. I think the term you said was balancing being versus becoming. So what brought about that shift, and if you can go into that a little bit for those that haven't seen the video.
Yeah. So this video was kind of an exploration for me in thinking about my relationship to the world and being versus becoming, or I also said like ambition versus surrender. Yeah. And I'm like giving acknowledgement and credit to the fact that for the last 8 years of my life I've been really ambitious, and I've like really tried to just put so much work into creating strength side, into myself as like an athlete and a practitioner, but all that kind of accumulating into like creating a brand and creating a business. And what I started to sense was like this ambitious state, like it helped me attain certain goals and get to certain things, but as far as like my happiness level, wasn't really improving my happiness level much at all. If anything, I think like I was finding that too much ambition is taking me out of the present moment, because I'm always thinking about where I need to get to and where I need to be and what's going to happen when I tick off this goal and everything. So in the last year, I'd say, like, I've really been making a huge effort to tone that down and to just kind of appreciate where I am right now. This being, more appreciating the being, and bringing myself present and letting myself kind of feel emotions that I've blocked away for many years. And that's one of the big ones, is that when you're in this like really becoming state, you're really ambitious. Like you kind of just like block anything away that wants to come up that you want to feel, and you can like hide from it from just, okay, I got to like focus on this next thing. I got to go really hard at attaining this goal.
Right. It could be a distraction from something you're not wanting to tackle by staying busy all the time.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. And for me, when I slowed down, it was like, oh, there's like a lot of emotions that are coming up that like, I can feel myself wanting to just run and go, like, let me just set a new goal to like get this to a new training goal or something. And like, that'll take all my energy. But yeah, it takes a big effort just to be like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to experience my life right now. I'm going to like just try to be here, be with the people around me, and appreciate things. And yeah, like I think, the title of that video, like why I quit setting goals. Like, I think what I've come to is that like goals are good. Like I think everyone should have goals, but they should be more driven by, they should be intrinsically motivated, right? Yeah. So like you should want that goal because like there's something about it that like fills you up and like makes you happy. But if it's extrinsically motivated and you just want it for some self-validation, or because like you think that's a good way to get love from the world, then it's gonna feel empty when you get it.
For sure. I think keeping perspective that everything is an ebb and flow is important too. It's like, just because you're in a more driven, goal-oriented state, and like, let's say that's feeling good for you right now, if you don't take that time to step back and actually be present and be more mindful, it can become toxic. And then on the flip side, I think you can also get in a place where you're like, man, I've been like, I feel like I haven't really done anything in a really long time.
Yep.
It's like I want to go out and set some goals. So it's a tricky thing to balance, and I think the way you described it was really cool, especially in the video, and also with social connection, because that's really important. What is that like for you? Like, are you primarily training by yourself and working by yourself most of the time?
So for a lot of years, the answer to that question would be yes. More recently, like living near my brother now, both my brothers actually, doing a lot more work with them, and doing a lot more training with them as well. So I like usually like my day-to-day training is on my own, but what's been really, really cool is like having them around. We'll go for a hike in the morning and then maybe go to a park and have a little movement session and on like the weekend or something, or we'll go to the climbing gym and I forget how much like that fills up my spirit to kind of what we were talking about earlier, to like get away from the sets and reps stuff and to just go have a day of I'm using my body physically for like what I can do with it. And I'm like sharing in these experiences. I'm figuring out these problems at like the bouldering gym or whatever. And, collaborating with people and having this physical or this more so social connection. Oh God, feels so good.
That's something I definitely miss in my own training, because it's been since college that I had like an actual dedicated training partner. Just 10 years ago now at this point. So I'm definitely craving that that social interaction with training. I think it's good to explore both sides of it, because some things for self-discovery you need to be alone, and it is healthy. You need time alone for reflection and all kinds of things, but I'm definitely in a state where I'm wanting some more socialization around training. So hopefully that happens for me as well. That's cool that you're with your brothers and able to train with them some.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. And yeah, I do want to state that like I do think training solo and being able to like really put in a lot of work by yourself is really, really
For sure.
valuable. And like you
For
said,
sure.
like it's great for reflection as well, self-reflection. And yeah, I've always like leaned towards that side of the scale of being a bit more of a spin solo time type of guy. So if you can't do that, then I think there's a lot of value there, and you should, practice doing
For sure.
that.
Yeah, I think I lean in that direction as well. So
Yeah.
one concept that's been fun to explore is like, quote, the bro's journey. And do you think it's necessary?
Yeah.
Which is basically everyone starts lifting because we want to get bigger, and then we do start to get bigger and stronger. We see that it is applicable for our sport, at least at first. And so we think like, all right, this is the way. And then you end up stiff and you're training with no direction. Maybe you're not even playing the sport anymore. And then you start unraveling this whole thing and trying to undo what you did in the first place. So do you think that's a necessary part for a physical and mental growth to go through that, and kind of, you're growing the ego at the same time, and then you try to start to unravel it all? Or is that something you think if you take a more strategic approach, you don't even have to go down that rabbit hole and undo what you did? Because it seems very common.
Yeah. Well, it's validating to hear that we've went through the same
Yeah.
journey, right?
And it's confusing because
and a lot of people do.
It helps so much at first. You're like, oh, this is all I need for the rest of my life, is to lift heavy weights.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, like at the essence, it's almost like we're asking, like, are mistakes necessary? Is it, do you have to go through those failures to then come out and like have a new perspective and get some success? And, it's a hard question to answer, because I think a lot of us do need that. We do need like to go down the wrong path a little bit, or to get too extreme. For someone that maybe in a different context, not taking this bro approach, but maybe they are, let's say, a competitive swimmer or parkour athlete, and maybe they don't take this bro approach, but you just like go so far into your training, into this competitive nature, and you kind of push the boundaries so much that then you pull back and you're like, that was too much for me, like that was too extreme. And you're able to kind of sit back into a new perspective of, well, what is important to me in like my movement, in my lifestyle, and now we can like better kind of, you have a better perspective to answer that question, right? So I don't know. For me, it was valuable. I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I didn't like, mess myself up so much and have to correct, right? But if I didn't do that, maybe I would be living like another cool life. It's hard to say. I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, I think without a doubt, the more you try to like nerf every corner for someone, the more it's going to cripple them in the long run. So
Yeah.
I like that, it doesn't have to be defined by lifting weights. It could be just going too far in one direction on anything, realizing that it's a yin and a yang, like the same thing that's helping you at one point. If you do too much of it, it could actually hurt you. And
That's right.
That's basically everything in life. Sunlight, different, minerals and vitamins. It's like you could take that in any direction. But yeah, the balance is really the key. But yeah, you've got to make mistakes. But it's hard after you've made them. You want to protect everyone from making the same mistake. But there's got to be a little bit of that. You would hope that it doesn't lead to an injury that's going to, ruin someone's athletic career or change their life in a big way that's not going to be productive long term. But I feel there's got to be a little bit of that for personal growth and starting to really understand your body and what you want.
I completely agree. Yeah. I think you said it really nicely there.
Cool. So along the lines of the clientele that are buying and using your programs, is it primarily older athletes that are either coming back from an injury or just are not feeling right anymore, they've become inactive, or what are you seeing as far as the demographic for your programs?
Yeah, we have a pretty wide demographic, but I would say like the majority, kind of what you just described with the bro journey in some type of context, like especially for the men, is usually like just people who kind of fell into the bodybuilding style of training and did that for many, many years. And, you reach 40 and you're like, oh, wow, like I can't touch my toes anymore. Like reaching behind me is difficult. So a lot of people just like want to still train, but like, can I train in a way that's going to lead to more functionality, more mobility? I could still be strong, but just maybe strong in a bit of a different context. Right. So that is, I'd say, the majority of our audience, I would just say our audience, actually, not even just the people that buy our programs, but obviously that kind of funnels in that way.
Right. Similar funnel to who's buying the program. So,
exactly.
Just a fun thought experiment. If you were, let's say, designing for yourself from the ground up, at what point would you have stopped, not stopped lifting weights, but started to cater more of your lifting less to hypertrophy and strength and more to movement? Because I feel like at least for guys, there's this like magical window when you're going through puberty where you can gain like I put on I think like 35 pounds of muscle in like 2 years. Like it was insane. Like I went from 150 just total string bean to like 195 over 2.5 years.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was
okay.
So like to have someone miss out on that feels like a disservice. Like there is a spot for lifting heavy weights and really maximizing what's going on with your hormones with your training. So what would that look like to you from, say, someone that's 12 or 13 that's active in sports, they've accumulated some skills up until say their mid 30s, and it can be just generalities, you don't have to go year by year, obviously, but just a fun thought experiment.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I think for me, what I wish, because I went through like a big, packing on muscle from like, 17 to 22 or whatever. And for me, like, I just wish that I would have maybe had a bit more guidance in just like better strength training. Like I fell into like, I want to like bench press a lot. I want to do like a lot of bicep curls. I'll balance this out with a few back machines or whatever,
Sounds
but
the exact same. I wish I would have had. That's like all I did was like curls and fly and stuff for like the first year. Yeah.
Exactly. And I wish I just would have maybe had someone like pull me aside and be like, okay, like let me teach you like the correct way to do pull-ups, because this is gonna like really like this is gonna be like a really good way to develop your whole body. And like, you're not gonna see it like you see your chest, but or like let me like someone teach me how to like deadlift correctly, because I think like with some really like basic exercises you can still get that hormonal response and still pack on some muscle. But I think like you could just keep it simple, and it doesn't need to be the showy bodybuilder style musculature and exercises. And But I think even when I was like younger, when I was say 18 and I started to like get into the gym, I actually like really got into it because you start seeing these results and you're just like, oh man, this is great. And it was really fun, you know, you go with your friends and stuff. But I kind of wish I would have kept the priority on still playing more, still like, you know, I started to probably get more into the gym than playing basketball, and I was a basketball player, you know. But
Sounds like deja vu.
then,
This is like my exact story as well. Yeah,
really,
I was basketball and then just turned to lifting way too much and stopped playing basketball.
just
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That's what I did too. And there's something there. Like I think like for young men, it feels really good to train your body. It feels really good to get stronger, and young women as well, I'm sure. But yeah, that led me down that route of like just being a gym bro and like, you know, losing a lot of functionality in my body because I was, you know, constricting my range of motion, and I was, you know, getting just like getting really, really stiff. So I wish I would have just kept playing more. I wish that I would have got into calisthenics a bit earlier, because I think calisthenics kind of lends itself to be a bit more full range of motion, and controlling your body weight and stuff. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah. No,
But
I'm on board with that, with the calisthenics and play. It's like play is the top priority when you start out. That's all you're doing as a kid is playing, and it's like
yes,
after you've gone through that like peak physical transformation in like your prime puberty years, I think that the journey should be, how do we taper back to play being a priority? And it's like figuring out a way to get back there without losing those strength gains and keeping your mobility. And that's like, that's the trick, is how do you do that? And I agree that calisthenics are a huge part of that, because once you've got the size and muscle, it's got to be a strength to weight ratio kind of deal, where you can move your body in space and body control. One thing I wish I would have done when I was younger was gymnastics. I've never been like a flipper. Like I've always had good hops, but I can't do like flips and that kind of thing. Well, can't, but haven't explored it yet.
yep,
But that's one thing that has been really intriguing to me, is all these like rolls and more kind of parkour stuff you're doing. Is that something you've always had, or something that you developed? Because I would say that's almost a fear for me, like flipping and rolling in space like that. How did you develop that?
yeah. Well, I was much like you. Like I really like what you said. You wish you would have done gymnastics. I wish I would have. So I primarily played ball sports growing up: basketball, football, baseball. I wish that I would have done gymnastics. I wish I would have done some martial arts, to kind of get this different type of body awareness. Right. I think basketball players are some of the most athletic people when it comes to hand-eye coordination and changing directions and whatnot. But we kind of lack the ability to interact with the ground, to interact in space, like you're saying, with like flips and rolls and stuff. So became a huge interest of mine later on, you know, like in my later 20s, I guess you could say, because I saw such a deficit. I was like, these things do not come natural to me, or I guess I just wasn't really nurtured to do these things. So I really wanted to improve upon that. And you know, like when you have a big deficit with something, and then when you bring that up, it like becomes really, really exciting.
For
so
sure.
For me, that's become such an exciting thing to be able to do some flips and to jump and to do rolls and to control my body like in space and the ground and stuff. Like it's it really changes like your proprioception in the world, and like the way that you think about things, the way that your body kind of functions and whatnot. So yeah, but same for me. Like I didn't grow up doing that stuff, and it's been fun to explore it. But there's a big fear element.
What was your starting point to turn that corner? Was it rolls on the ground, or what were you doing first? What got you comfortable or more comfortable?
Yeah. I would say kind of like the trajectory of this was first starting to get into the ground movement, the more animal style, capoeira. I did capoeira for a few years. So you start to kind of develop this relationship to the ground, and then I started to get more into like modern dance type of movement. So like a lot of interaction with your whole body being on the ground. And then started to get interested in parkour. And yeah, with parkour, it started with rolls on the ground, martial arts style rolls, just kind of like safety rolls, being able to break a fall. And then it just kind of from there, it just led to more and more of like, let me just push myself a bit more. Let's push my own boundaries and limits here. Let's like, can I dive over something and roll? Learning some flips and stuff like that. So yeah, I was like, started at a very basic level, like crawling.
Yeah. Just getting familiar with the ground.
Started there. Exactly. And then just like kind of coming more and more to the air from there, I guess you could say.
Nice. Yeah, the parkour thing is something that definitely interests me. I used and that got really big like real early on, and everyone was trying to do some form of parkour, just like running, jumping off stuff. Like they got that Office episode. Yeah. Right. So I was into it, but I never like actually got into it where I was rolling through stuff and doing like the Kong hop and all that cool looking stuff. So that's something I would love to explore, definitely later in my athletic career.
You would take to it nicely because like if you can jump. So like I think that's one of the hugest parts of parkour is like being able to like be explosive off the ground and like jump and have some type of awareness in the air. So yeah, I have seen with like people who have a basketball background that they like really like learn things very quickly in parkour and excel fast.
Cool. So if an athlete does want to take a more movement and calisthenics or bodyweight approach, what gaps do you think there are that need to be filled in the weight room?
Yeah. I think if you're taking a more bodyweight approach, then you need to have something to develop your leg power more, like specifically posterior chain, probably hamstring strength. So, I think like for your upper body, you can make huge gains with just like pull-ups and push-up type variations. But at some point, probably a barbell squat, deadlift, or split squat, any type of variation is going to be helpful in developing that power for your sport.
So if someone's wanting to balance like a movement-based practice and hypertrophy, what do you think the best way to go about that is? Because someone may not necessarily be an athlete. They just want to get jacked, but they also don't want to feel terrible.
Yeah. I think it comes down to priorities, right? So it's like you can do both. People have proven that you can do things that maybe oppose each other, right? But you just have to give each their like significant focus, right? So like you can't go and just lift weights for 90% of your training and then do 10%, like a few stretches here and there and like expect to be all mobile and a good mover. It's like, if you want to be a good mover and you want to put time into some type of movement practice and you want to get jacked, then like you just need to balance those two, and you need to probably be giving them around 50% attention at any given time, right? And it is possible for sure. You see guys out there who are incredibly jacked and can move really well. But another thing I think that you have to pay attention to is just full range of motion, right? Like that's a huge one, is like, are you training yourself to get stronger and your hypertrophy through full range of motion? Because if you're not, then you're probably going to stiffen up that joint and your movement quality is probably going to go down.
So how are you currently balancing weightlifting and movement practice with body weight training or calisthenics as well? Or are you currently lifting weights, or is it all body weight based?
Um, so currently right now in this moment, I'm doing some weighted
Mm-hmm.
calisthenics. So I mean that's like you can consider that lifting weights, or like you could consider anything weighted
Right,
calisthenics. So I think it's all kind of the
right,
same.
right. External,
It's like a barbell squat is kind of
what?
a weighted body weight
Right,
squat.
right. So yeah,
uh,
external
um,
load, I guess, is a better way to define it
yeah,
outside of
sure.
gravity.
Yes. Right, right. So yeah, I'm doing quite a bit of like lifts with external load, like weighted pull-ups and um, push-ups, and then let's see. I mean I do use weights for like in a body weight approach, it's hard to, like, for instance, train like your rotator cuff without using some
Right.
weight, right? So like I use light dumbbells for a lot of different things. For primarily though, like shoulders and like mid back and stuff like that, like bringing up the traps and whatnot. Like these things work great. But yeah, I usually keep things pretty light, like 10 pounds maybe, stuff like that. 10-pound dumbbells are great. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of a look at right now. I'm not doing anything weighted for my lower body, but I'm doing like some Nordic curls, which is, like
Yeah, it's
basically like having like
brutal.
300 pounds on your back or something.
Yeah, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the most
So
brutal lower body calisthenic you can do, essentially.
yeah, right, right. Actually, so I saw your video on your kind of Nordic
Yeah, the
journey. It's
progression.
really
Yeah,
cool, man. Yeah,
thanks,
yeah.
man.
It's really, really impressive that uh, you, yeah, like that you that you took everything like in such a step-by-step approach, like, and you just see the value in that. It's great.
Yeah, I just thought that, with bands, it's such a great tool to not have to limit that range of motion if you're not strong enough yet. It's like
Right.
experience the range of motion, but just have a little bit taken off. I think that went a
I
long way
like
for
that.
me. And I
Yeah.
also a huge impact with the Nordic, I think, is having something to plant your feet on. I don't know if you've used a Nordic
Mm.
bench versus just like strapping to a regular bench, but man, you can create so much more tension when you get that shin angle like perfectly flat and you got your toes pressed in, where you can really like activate the calves before you even begin the descent.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I think
Interesting.
that's a game changer as well.
Yeah, I have a Nordic bench actually, like the Rogue one,
Oh,
and
nice.
uh, yeah, it really changed my my Nordic practice. Like earlier on, just strapping my legs in on top of the bench, like just never felt that good. But
No,
yeah,
because
I
it like
guess
squeezes your knees again. It's not wide enough. It's like your
yeah.
hips are, unless you got like a wide powerlifting bench. I felt like my
Mm,
knees were not in line with my hips every time I would do that. So that was
yes,
kind of a
definitely.
weird squeeze.
And also what you said, I guess I hadn't really thought about it too much, but what you said about having your feet touch something and being able to kind of activate the calf, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, it locks you in. Also, like
Yeah.
the psychology on a Nordic bench where you're lower to the ground and like your chest, especially if you're taller, that you're actually gonna like not invert your knees if you fail this thing. Whereas if you're like
Yeah,
leaning off
right.
the edge of something, it's sketchy. So
Yeah, yeah,
I think
true.
that makes a big difference. Have you messed
Yep.
around with I'm not sure if you saw that foam roller bridge video on my channel, but I think David Gray was the one that popularized it, where essentially it's like
Mm,
a single leg bridge on a foam roller where you're keeping, so you've got a slight knee bend with one leg and you're keeping the soleus flexed, and then you
okay.
do a slight posterior pelvic tilt to get your butt off the ground while flexing that calf on the leg that's supporting you, and it is brutal. I mean, like
Okay.
I could do Nordic curls, but trying that, it was like a totally different stimulus. So you should check that one out if you
And
want to.
your foot is on the foam roller?
It is. It's on your
Okay.
it's kind of like on the ball of your foot, and you're having
Okay.
to squeeze the calf as hard as you can the whole time. It's wild.
Yeah,
I'd be curious for you to try it and see what you think, 'cause I know,
I will. That sounds super interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially with
I'm
your.
always
Go ahead.
uh no, I was just gonna say I'm always into learning kind of new exercises and variations for posterior chain with more of a body weight approach because it's harder to do, I think. So
Yeah, and
that's nice right there.
this is more accessible, I found, for like a Nordic
Mm.
bench. It's like you got to MacGyver the thing if you don't have it,
Yeah.
and it's like you end up with
Yeah.
some sketchy setup. But this is like almost everyone has access to a foam roller, so I think this is a really good
Yeah.
entry level point for a lot of people.
Nice. Nice. I like that. Yeah. 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 And like one thing I found a lot of value in is just doing like or hamstring curls like with rings, or even just like with a towel on the floor. I think like there's some good value to be had there for someone who can't, get a Nordic setup,
For sure.
right off the bat, and who doesn't like maybe have access to a gym to go do the machine hamstring curls or whatever.
Yeah.
Like there's different ways to do things, and they're hard. Like they suck,
Yeah.
like, and I think that's why some people like are just like, oh, well, I don't have the right setup and everything. And it's like, no, you could just get on the ground and do this right now. And it'll be challenging.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely humbles you the first time you try it.
Yep.
Are you still primarily using the rings for your upper body, or like what? So like your pulling and pushing motions, are you doing a lot of that on the ring still, or is it regular bar?
Yeah, it's more so a regular bar. Like I'm not doing a lot of ring specific work anymore. I'll still do like some of my chin up work on ring sometimes because I like having the ability to like move my grip. But I'm not doing like muscle ups and stuff on top of the rings. It's more so like stricter calisthenics, weighted calisthenics type work right now. My pushing work is more so push-ups on parallettes and like some handstand push-up stuff as well.
What's the primary driver for that? Is it just your current setup, or was there something with the rings that you lost interest in?
I think just I went pretty deep into the ring training stuff, and I think it has a ton of value with especially like just hitting all of your muscles in this like 360 degree fashion, and like tendon and connective tissue strength. Like there's so much there in the ring training, but at the same time it's very taxing. Like it's and as you train more and more, as I get older and stuff, I have to think about like, where do I want to put my energy? Like I can do a ring session, but like I'm going to be really, really like just blasted for like a couple days or something, So, yeah, it's more so just like trying to be a bit more efficient in some of the things that I'm trying to work towards right now.
I think that's something in your podcast with Fitness FAQ that I really like that you are talking about. It's like you've got to let go of certain parts of training, like to keep your overarching objective or direction you want to go in check. 'Cause it's like certain things require so much from you mentally and physically to maintain. So you'll reach a level where it's like, all right, I can't maintain all of this stuff. And like, why is this one exercise defining me if it's not a part of my current goals? So
it's so true, man. Yeah. And it's one of the hardest things to do is to let go of something that you worked really hard towards for a while. Like I'll just give an example. Like for me, I took this like press handstand journey, and I developed the Stalder press, where you sit on the ground and you straddle your legs and then you lift yourself into a handstand. And this took me like 3-4 years or something to develop. And
yeah, I can't even imagine doing that.
yeah, right. That's how I was in the beginning. Yeah. And then, you know, I got to it, and then I started to develop multiple reps of it, and I could do like 2 reps. I got to 3 reps at one point, and then, you know, at some point I just was like, well, where am I going with this now? Do I want to get to 5 reps? Like, what's the end goal? And it was taking so much of my time and energy, and I eventually just decided to let it go, and it was like such a hard process mentally for me. I was just like, well, maybe I'll just keep like a couple in each week just to like maintain it, and you're like making deals with yourself and stuff. But eventually it was just like, yeah, that was a thing I did, and that was super awesome to go through that process. And you know, I don't have to maintain it to like be important.
It's funny. That's like very much where I am with the Nordic curl right now, because that was like my first like breakout video on my channel. So it's like, oh, I'm the Nordic curl guy now. But it's like that move became so taxing, like to where I could do 5 clean bodyweight reps. It's like, to maintain this, the rest of my training is like in the sewer right now, because my hamstrings are so trash from that. So I've found a better balance, but it was like, trying to, I went down the same thing. It's like, well, maybe I'll just do, sprinkle in a little bit here and there. But it's like, sometimes you just got to step away from something for a little while to explore some other avenues of training. But it's hard to do when you've worked hard for something. I didn't work for years on that, but a 3 or 4 year journey to get to something that's must have been pretty hard to let go of. And it's not like you couldn't get back there if you wanted to. You got to keep that perspective as well.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think once you develop something, it sits in your range so much more, as long as you don't like quit doing anything and get out of shape and stuff.
Right.
And I'm sure it's the same for you with the Nordics. Like, if you wanted to get back to that 5 rep, it would probably take way less time than the first time that you went towards it. I'm interested to know like what are you up to now with the Nordics? What's the balance that you've found?
So right now I'm doing more of that foam roller bridge that's an isometric.
Nice.
So it's a similar stimulus, but it's not as taxing, because I've also been doing some sprints on the air runner as well. So it's like,
okay.
I mean, the whole thing is, you do Nordics because you want to be fast and athletic, but if I can do Nordics but they're trashing me so I actually can't run, it's like, well, what's the point of doing the Nordic to begin with? So
exactly.
I've got just a bit more balanced hamstring training approach right now, where I'm not going balls to the wall on anything, so that I can sprint. And I also play a fair amount of pickleball, which has a lot of deceleration, where you sprint to the line and then stop. So it's a good combo to do like all out sprints on the air runner, and then you get, because that's like all acceleration with no deceleration. But then in pickleball you get constant decel, because you're sprinting and then stopping, sprinting and stopping in small little doses. So that to me has me feeling pretty good right now. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think, man, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think, like, because we're talking about for younger athletes and stuff, I think I wish that I would have just put like hill sprints or any type of sprints into my training a bit more. Like, I think that has huge like capacity gains, and it has so much carryover into any type of sport. Like I would probably place that above like a barbell squat, or maybe even a deadlift for like a lot of young athletes. Just go sprint and do pull-ups, and you're going to be like super strong and fast.
Sprints are incredible, and they're so easy to lose too. Like when you go to that desk job and get stiff with the weightlifting, it's like, man, the furthest thing from you right now is being able to sprint. So it's like getting back to that is something I've really craved, and trying to make that more of a priority is like, being able to express myself. It's like I'm strong, but I can't express it because I'll hurt myself. So it's like wanting to actually have usable strength and express it more frequently. And to do that, you've got to turn the dial down a bit on the strength gaining. And like, it kind of goes back to that being versus becoming. It's like I got way too focused on the becoming, and I wasn't actually using any of my athleticism or strength. So it's like if you don't express it, you get in this weird state. That's definitely a balance, not only in life but in fitness as well.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. One of my buddies calls. He's used this phrase like capacity monsters, and it's like it kind of like it's for like people that are just like they just build so much in the gym and they can just they're just so strong and like and they just but it's like you're increasing your capacity so much, but like you don't ever use it.
Right.
So like, and I don't want to say that's wrong or anything, but it's like you said earlier. Like I think what we all want is to increase our capacity to use it in something, and to play. So, yeah, it's good things to just chew on.
Yeah, for sure. So,
yeah,
a lot of people that may see some of your movement stuff and are inspired by it, but have no clue how to begin, especially if, say, someone's overweight, because that makes body weight and movement that much harder. What do you think the best entry point for someone that is overweight if they want to get into a more kind of movement-based practice outside of just the structured reps and set kind of thing?
Yeah. Well, for anybody that's overweight and like wanting to kickstart getting into shape, like I think going for walks is just one of like should just be the baseline, you know, like that's just like the low hanging fruit that I think a lot of people skip. And you know, you might see someone that just like really wants to kickstart getting into shape, and you go to the gym and you start doing like some like, you know, lifting routines, and you're trying to like run on the treadmill and stuff, but like you have these expectations to like where you want to get and like where you should be, and then a lot of the time like you just end up quitting because it's too much, and you can't really reach those expectations. So I think just starting with just the basics of walking, and then, you know, from there it's like let's build up momentum, and let's see what we can do. And maybe that's just doing some body weight squats now. Maybe that's, you know, starting to do a few push-ups. Like these are the things that are just so accessible, and that you can like build simple routines that are going to take you 15 minutes. You know, 15 minutes is all you need. A few times a week, you know, combined with some longer walks, you can like really start to get in some good shape. And then maybe you do want to go to the gym and start lifting some weights, right? And you're at a place where, you know, your body can handle that. And so that's I always try to encourage people to just make things accessible, because you know, I think that's the biggest problem in our culture, is that like we have this like all or nothing mentality where it's like I got to be like just going so hard, going to the gym 5 days a week, eating perfect, you know, going for runs, doing everything like to the T, or else if I can't do that, then why would I do anything? Let me just order a pizza and watch Netflix tonight, you know? But dude, 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, change your life.
Yeah, for sure. If it's not perfect, then why even do it at all? But it's like that's the totally wrong mentality. You've got to build some momentum somewhere, because it becomes exponential, like that positive momentum and energy. But that's right. I agree 100% with the walks. It's said so often, but it's like it's still hard to explain how beneficial it is just to walk every day. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's
yes.
Like the
definitely.
ultimate starting point. What about your current diet? I know you've maintained a super, you know, lean body composition for years now. Is that something that you're focused on, or you're it just kind of happens through what you do?
Yeah, I think in the early years, I didn't have to put too much focus into. Well, I should take that back. Early on, actually, like I got really, really out of shape, kind of post playing basketball in college, and I, just started playing beer pong with friends, 4 nights a week and eating terrible, and I blew up, and I was like overweight, and then I hated it, so I got in shape, and then like more recently, like in the earlier YouTube days, it was more of a product of what I was doing physically. I was training a lot. Like I would train 3-4 hours a day, like multiple sessions and stuff. It was just hard not to be lean when you're like moving that much, like I didn't have to pay too close attention to my diet at all. And then in recent years, like the last like 2 years, I've really cleaned up quite a bit, and I've like nowadays I eat pretty much like a paleo style diet, and yeah, it's not really, I've never been concentrated on like calories or like how much I'm eating or whatnot. It's more so just like trying to eat good quality stuff, and I think like when training is a priority in your life, like I just want to fuel myself to be able to train more, and then also to like not overeat and to like to in that emotional side of it, like stuffing myself because maybe I don't feel that great emotionally. So it's just kind of balancing like those things, but yeah, but more of the, like what I'm eating is just vegetables, meat, eggs, nuts. Yeah.
So more like a non-strict kind of paleo style. And
exactly.
Are you still doing any fasting? Is that something because I know you had made some intermittent fasting videos in the past. Is that something you're still adhering to as kind of an eating window, or is it more intuitive, or how do you approach that?
Yeah, so I've done intermittent fasting off and on for many years now. Right, currently now, not doing intermittent fasting. I'm feeling a bit better with having something to eat in the mid morning. And yeah, like you said, just more of an intuitive approach. I'm kind of doing that to play with my energy levels more. I find that sometimes when I'm intermittent fasting, I can definitely really like focus a lot in the morning. I can get a lot done. I have like really good energy levels, but I find that when I have that first meal, I get pretty tired after it. And a lot of the time I'll need to take a nap or lay down or something for a little bit. So I'm playing with eating earlier in the day if I don't get as much of that energy down more in the afternoon. And it has seemed to be that way to kind of sustain my energy levels a little bit more. But at the same time, sometimes there'll be a day where I'll just like, I just feel like fasting and getting a lot of work done this morning and stuff. And man, that feels good too sometimes.
And is your training usually in the morning in a fasted state? Is that, or is it vary?
Yeah, so usually, or when I was doing intermittent fasting, it would always be in a fasted state, usually mid-morning, like a lot of the time maybe around like 11 o'clock in the morning or something. Now I'm usually having a little breakfast before it, something kind of small, but yeah. Once again, like it's another thing where like I actually really enjoy training fasted.
Yeah, I do
too. Feels
too.
pretty good to be like, yeah, you do too. Yeah, like nothing in the stomach, not digesting anything, just all my blood's flowing to my muscles and stuff. It feels nice. Yeah. So do you do intermittent fasting?
It's not super strict. Like I try to do a 16-8, but it usually ends up being more like a 14-10, somewhere in there. So I doubt I'm actually going into ketosis at any point. Just gotta eat a moderate level of carbs like fruits and try to limit any processed grains. But I definitely like training fasted. It took a minute to get adjusted to, but I just feel way sharper. And then I'll have a kind of like a late morning breakfast, after training. So that's usually around 10 o'clock or so is when I'll eat my first meal, and that seems to make me feel pretty good. I've experimented a lot though. That's one nice thing with working from home or making your own schedule is you can experiment, with whatever you want to do with your schedule. So that's kind of what I've come to after trying a ton of different styles of eating that works best for me.
Nice.
You mess around with any supplementation outside of just food?
I supplement like just basic stuff like vitamin D3. I'll do some fish oil, some zinc. Let's see, anything else? Like lately I've been doing some like beef organ supplements. So yeah, like I like to play around in that realm a little bit, but nothing that like I'd hang my hat on, like everybody should take this.
Same.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's been my experience too. I always keep the D3 in there, especially during the winter. I do fish oil off and on. I'll do protein powder, but outside of that, it's like I haven't really found anything that I feel moves the needle and warrants like spending money on, or like not trying to seek out in regular food. I'm not like super scientific about it. I'm sure there's stuff that could help, but from my experience, I just haven't found anything that really moves the needle outside of trying to just optimize for like basically for maintaining general wellness, not for like performance or anything. As far as D3 and that kind of thing, like with your immune system.
Yep.
Speaking of immune system, with it being cold and flu season, I recently just got over a little cold myself, but what is your training approach when you get sick? 'Cause I know people take this in all different directions.
When I get sick, usually for me it's like, I guess it depends on the severity of the sickness, but yeah, if I catch a good cold, like, I need a few days of doing nothing usually. Like I gotta let my body rest and recover. I think that's the nicest thing to do with it. I think it's but I would say on the end of that, once that like peak of the cold has, you're off that, I think like getting some light movement in as quickly as possible is really good for the system. Just get blood flow. Could even just be like a walk, but like I think blood flow is really, really important when we're sick, and actually just all the time. But like that's just going to help that immune system. It's my thoughts.
What are some habits outside of your movement practice that you found to be the most beneficial for your overall well-being?
Yeah, a couple I already mentioned. Reading and journaling, I found those to be just like two of my favorite things to do, just to keep me in a good state. A lot of it comes back to what we were talking about earlier, is like you could go on your phone and start clicking some things and get on social media, or you could read something that might impact the way you're thinking that day, or you might learn something. And then journaling is just huge for getting your actual thoughts about what's going on in your life down on paper. I think that's like I think it's one that everybody could benefit for, like the opposite of the supplement question. Like,
right.
I think most people would find some benefits in journaling, but it's kind of like a weird thing to do. It's like, oh, like I'm gonna keep a diary. Like, a lot of men don't want to do that.
Yeah, there's like that weird stigma around it where it does get related to a diary. And it's like, man, I don't want to do that. But
yeah. But and one thing like you could think of it as, if like you're not comfortable with like just writing your thoughts down, and that can be challenging sometimes, but just think of like a prompt that you want to write about, or it could even be like what you want to focus on in your training, if you're like really into training or something, so you can make it a little bit more practical to your life. But I think writing things down is huge. And then, yeah, outside of that, like, like we kind of talked about earlier with ambition and becoming, like, I find it helpful for me to just really prioritize like some social time, spending some time with friends, just going out to dinner with my girlfriend, something like that, kind of break through the constant thoughts about what I should do for this and what I need to change in my training and how I can make a better YouTube video,
Right.
and just be in the world.
What about meditation? Do you mess around with meditation at all?
Yeah, definitely. I've I've went like, I'm sure as most people do, like I've gone through a lot of phases with meditation. I've spent time doing like the Joe Dispenza meditations that were like 40 minutes long every morning. I've done that for like 3 months straight. I've also just done like sitting, silent meditation, focus on my breath for 10 to 15 minutes. Also just doing like some guided meditations and whatnot. I love meditation. I think it's great, and it's one of those things that, you take some time away from it and then you come back to it and you're just like, oh, what am I doing? Like, I should be doing this every day,
Yeah.
but it's hard. There's for whatever reason, for a lot of people, there's just a barrier to sit down and do it. But
It's
most of the
almost
time
like
you feel better after.
it's so easy to do that it's easy not to do it, because it's like it requires nothing like but time. Like, just
Yeah.
sit down and do nothing for 20 minutes. It's like that's
Yeah.
shockingly hard to do. And I I've been fairly dedicated for the last probably 3 or 4 months or so, but I definitely feel that it's easy
Nice.
to slip out of, like, and I think it is because it is so easy to do that it's easy to just forget about and say, oh well, I've got time to do that tomorrow.
Exactly. And it's like the pace of our world is so fast nowadays, right? And it's like we're not necessarily even getting that much done. Like, we're not like being that much more productive than people were, like, say in the 50s maybe, but
Right.
like it just always seems like there's something to do. Like, there's the next thing that I need to do. I need to get onto this task. I need to get on the computer and order this thing. I need to answer this person. And I think meditation is like one of the best ways to break that, to break through that mindset. But for the same reason, it's also the hardest, because you're
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I could meditate, or I do need to answer these emails, and that seems like really important, even though
Yeah.
it's not.
You get addicted to the constant stimulus. It's hard to break away from it. And
That's
it's
right.
like, man, and then you just feel the anxiety when you do break away from it, and you've got to like face that in a way that's really challenging.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and I think another good break is just being in nature. Like, like
For sure.
walking in nature. It's kind of a meditation in itself, right? And that's a huge one for me. Like, what I find when I'm outside more, when I'm probably like go camping, or it doesn't even have to be going camping though. It could just be like doing my training session out at the park instead of doing it in my garage. Like, that will just like really like make me relax a little bit more, make me see things in a different perspective, because like, oh, I can see the horizon, I can see these mountains, I can see trees and stuff. Like, it really changes. It really changes your state.
For sure. So, what what differences do you feel in your body now and in your approach versus, say, 3 years ago when you already well into this practice? Would you say that you feel better, worse, just different, or pretty, once you started this way of training and kind of, um, you know, the way your mindset is now, have you felt pretty stable over the last 3 years?
Hmm. I would say that I feel more details in my body, like and I think this is just a product of, um, spending many years like more conscious of what's going on in your body, just being in your body for many years, like even if you're not super conscious of it, you start to notice more details when you're doing a specific exercise or movement, or like it's like you start noticing, okay, like this muscle does this when I do this. Okay, maybe I'm getting more connected to this muscle now, which is making me feel more connected and stronger. And I guess that could be termed as better.
Interoception, kind of like stronger.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and it's like maybe yeah, I think there is something to like maybe on paper like you don't get stronger, but like in your body, like this more connected feeling, like you feel stronger. You feel like you can react to something better, or you can you're just in your body more. And I would say, like, I guess that is where I'm at right now. And I mean, I'm thankful that I don't really have a lot of pains and whatnot to work through, and I get to feel like pretty good in my body every day, which is fabulous, because like 10 years ago I didn't feel that way at all.
Yeah, that makes sense, that it's more, since you're exercising and being more mindful and conscious, that you are building that relationship inside of you where it's not on paper, but it's like you feel better subjectively through your experience.
Yes.
That's
right.
Cool.
Yeah. What's your experience like with that?
So it's an ebb and flow. I've went through the whole knee pain journey and found for me that it was a hypersensitization of the nervous system, where I was this, and still am, but doing my best to continue to learn and grow, but an obsessive behavior over the pain, this chronic state of fixing. So I've definitely taken a deep dive on consciousness, the subconscious mind, in a way where I am much more in tune, but in a healthier way now. That's not as obsessive, like, oh, that feels a little off today, and then I like can't let it go all day and be like, I gotta look up what exercise to do to make this little tweak feel better. So it's like, for me, it's been a lot of mental and psychological growth of being able to let go of things like that. Yeah. And then it's funny, I had an ankle injury as well at the end of the season, wakeboarding. Okay. Took a pretty nasty wakeboard crash. So I've been coming back from that, because I was just in a place where I was like back to throwing down dunks and stuff, where my knees were feeling good, and It's like, wham, another injury. So I'm making progress, but it's really putting the time into keeping my head in a good space, which is right. It's easy to say, but it's really hard to put into practice and live it daily. So I think that's where the majority of my growth has come, is just where my head is, and knowing kind of the power of the subconscious mind and nervous system, and trying to find that balance of continuing to pursue the things that I want to, while getting stronger and more athletic, but not obsessing over these things in a way that it's going to be counterproductive in the long term.
Yeah, that's nice, man. I like that a lot. And it just makes me think of like, when you're at the end of your life, like you can't take your strength with you, right. So it's like, it has to be serving a purpose for us to just like be living a more fulfilled life. And I can totally relate. Like, I've been in those states where you're just hyper focused on one thing, and that's not like a very happy life to be living, like, so no, that's nice.
Well, I think that's a good ending point for us today, Josh. I really appreciate your time. And will you tell people, if they don't already know, where they can find you?
Yeah, strengthside.com, or just head over to YouTube and search Strengthside. You'll find all our stuff there.
Cool. You got anything else you want to share with the audience?
Yeah. So maybe just a lot of the stuff like I loved the topics that we went over today. Like, there's so many good questions. I feel like you hit like some specifics and then like some really more like vague like philosophical approaches. And I think like one of my big messages is that you know don't think there's something that you have to do physically, right? Like, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do what's popular. You don't have to do what like your parents thought you should do when you were a kid playing sports. You should really take some time to reflect and think about like what types of movement, what types of activities make you happy, what interest you, and follow those, and have fun with those. And when necessary, go to the gym and get stronger or get faster or whatever to do those better. But I think just always follow your interests. That's going to lead to more fun and more fulfillment.
I love it. I think that's well said. All right, man. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me on. This has been great.